British singer Andy Gibb released the popular album Shadow Dancing and was the youngest brother of the sibling singing group the Bee Gees. Andy Gibb began his career in Australia before relocating to Miami to work with his brother, Barry Gibb. While Gibb pursued a solo singing career, his brothers formed the popular 1970s band the Bee Gees. Andy gained popularity and commercial success with his album Shadow Dancing. However, he struggled with drug addiction and later declared bankruptcy. He died in 1988. Andy Gibb was born Andrew Roy Gibb on March 5, 1958, in Manchester, England. He grew up in the shadow of his older brothers, Barry, and twins Robin and Maurice. The son of a bandleader and a singer, Gibb moved with his family, which also included sister Leslie, to Australia when he was very young. There his brothers had a successful television show and started their recording career. The family later returned to England where the Bee Gees really began to thrive. Gibb was still a child when his brothers had their first big hit as the sibling singing group the Bee Gees. His brother Barry encouraged Gibb to pursue his own interest in music and gave Gibb his first guitar. As the youngest brother of the Bee Gees, Gibb also enjoyed the perks of the rock and roll lifestyle. He dropped out of school in his early teens to follow his passion for music. In an interview with People magazine, Gibb later said, "Everybody said I'd regret leaving school so young, but there was nothing else I would rather have done." While he had hoped to join the Bee Gees, Andy Gibb started up his own group called Melody Fair in the mid-1970s. He and his bandmates split up, however, while they were in Australia trying to promote the group. Before long, Gibb had a new band called Zinta. He eventually attracted the attention of Robert Stigwood, who had helped propel his brothers to fame. A talented songwriter, Gibb scored his first hit in Australia with his own composition, Words and Music. In 1976, an 18-year-old Gibb moved to the United States to work on a solo career. He lived in Miami, Florida, with his wife Kim Reeder. The pair had married that summer. The couple divorced a few years later. Working with brother Barry, Gibb started recording his first album Flowing Rivers, 1977. The recording proved to be a huge success, featuring two #1 hits, I Just Want to Be Your Everything and Love is Thicker Than Water. Gibb quickly became a popular singer in his own right. Attractive and personable, he was a favorite among many teenagers of the day and had photos of him appear in numerous teen magazines. Gibb quickly went to work on his next effort, Shadow Dancing, 1978. The record went multi-platinum, and the title track went to the top spot on the pop charts. While professionally thriving, Gibb was struggling with a substance abuse problem in his personal life. During the recording of his final studio album, After Dark, 1980, Gibb seemed to be sinking deeper into his drug addiction. He took on more projects, but his ability to work was severely affected by his personal problems. He served as the co-host for the syndicated music show Solid Gold with Marilyn McCoo, but he lost this job for failing to show up for work. On Broadway, Gibb starred in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. He was fired from Joseph, however, for missing too many performances. His drug use also ended his relationship with actress Victoria Principal in the mid-1980s. Gibb finally sought help for his addiction at the Betty Ford Clinic at the urging of his family. After his release, he continued to make appearances but never returned to his past fame. Gibb had gone through all of the money he had made at his peak and had to declare bankruptcy in 1987 in early 1988. Gibb signed a deal with Island Records. He went to England to make his first record for his new label, but he never finished the project. Gibb began feeling ill shortly after his 30th birthday. On March 10, 1988, Gibb died at a hospital in Oxford, England, at the age of 30. The cause of death was determined to be myocarditis, a heart condition. Gibb is survived by his daughter, Peta, from his short-lived marriage to Kim Reeder, 34 years after his death on March 10, 1988 at age 30. A new biography, Arrow Through the Heart, re-examines the blazing talent and tragic end of Andy Gibb. Andy's downfall was as spectacular as his rise to the top, says author Matthew Hild, who interviewed friends and musicians who knew Andy from his earliest days back when he dreamt of becoming a Bee Gee and joining his brothers on stage. The biography explores his deep insecurities, struggles with fame, and descent into cocaine addiction, which ravaged his health. Andy was beloved, and yet it all went terribly wrong, says Hild. But the seeds of that were planted long before, when still in his teens, he was thrust onto the world stage. He launched his solo career playing in bars in Ibiza and Australia as a teen and made a name for himself. By 1976, his eldest brother Barry Gibb, whom he idolized, told him he wanted to work together. And Hill describes how the two brothers reunited at Robert Stigwood's estate to collaborate on some surefire hits for his first album. Andy could only sit and watch in astonishment as Barry wrote, "I just want to be your everything" on the spot in about 20 minutes, writes Hild. The song spent 4 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard charts, soon followed by Love is Thicker Than Water and Shadow Dancing. Andy made pop history after his first 3 singles became #1 hits, turning him into a global superstar at age 19. But behind Andy's easy charm and sweet sexiness was a young man who battled insecurity over his songwriting abilities and reliance on Barry, who wrote or co-wrote, as well as produced, some of his biggest hits, even despite assurances from his eldest brother that he had a talent all his own. Says Hild, Barry would tell him, "We have 3 of us, but look at what you do. We can't do that." He launched his solo career playing in bars in Ibiza and Australia as a teen and made a name for himself. By 1976, his eldest brother Barry Gibb, whom he idolized, told him he wanted to work together. And Hill describes how the two brothers reunited at Robert Stigwood's estate to collaborate on some surefire hits for his first album. Andy could only sit and watch in astonishment as Barry wrote, "I just want to be your everything on the spot in about 20 minutes, writes Hild. The song spent 4 weeks at #1 on the Billboard charts, soon followed by Love Is Thicker Than Water and Shadow Dancing. Andy made pop history after his first 3 singles became #1 hits, turning him into a global superstar at age 19. But behind Andy's easy charm and sweet sexiness was a young man who battled insecurity over his songwriting abilities and reliance on Barry, who wrote or co-wrote, as well as produced, some of his biggest hits, even despite assurances from his eldest brother that he had a talent all his own. Says Hild, Barry would tell him, "We have 3 of us, but look at what you do. We can't do that." His brothers asked him to come to Miami where they could work together and offer support. Eventually, Barry took Andy to London to put together a new record deal. Andy moved there in early 1988 to live in a carriage house on the property of his brother, Robin. At first, he was optimistic, says Hild. He sounded hopeful and was telling friends he was looking forward to working again. But what he didn't reveal was that his health had grown increasingly fragile. On the evening of March 9, 1988, Andy collapsed in the cottage on Robin's estate and was hospitalized. He died the next morning of myocarditis, inflammation of the heart muscle. Decades later, Hild hopes the book, which has been optioned by Lisa Saltzman Groundbreaking Productions, will bring a reassessment of Andy Gibb's legacy. Andy is often misunderstood. Because his decline was so heavily publicized, his reputation unjustly suffered, he says. He was a versatile performer who starred on Broadway and co-hosted Solid Gold on television. He deserves more attention for his own talent rather than just being the kid brother of the Bee Gees. And it was a talent all his own. There was something about Andy that drew people to him, says Hild. People sensed his vulnerability, and it came through in his music. For more on Andy Gibb, pick up a copy of the latest issue of People on newsstands everywhere Friday.